Help us understand that connection just a little bit more, because classical Marxism was a focus on economic oppression. That's at the center of the worldview. But what we're seeing today now, more so, is there's certainly a push for socialist programs, but it goes far beyond that to race, as you said before, gender, sexuality. Help us understand that genealogy from classical Marxism to critical race theory.
Right. Well, there were a group of Marxists in the 20s in Frankfurt, Germany, called the Frankfurt School. People like Herbert Marcuse and Max Horkheimer, Erich Fromm, and others. And they realized that the vision of Marx and Engels had never really worked out the way they anticipated. They anticipated workers around the world to become more and more alienated and more discontent. So they expected world revolution from the bottom up, from the workers. And the revolution that happened in Russia was really not from the bottom up, from the peasants. And the same thing was the case later in China with Mao Zedong. But in the 20s and 30s, these thinkers were saying, well, America should have had its revolution already because it's a capitalist country. And they even went through the Great Depression and didn't have a major revolution where the proletariat rose up and overthrew the bourgeois and created the dictatorship of the proletariat. They must not be reading their Marx, you know. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So they said, we have to refine the Marxist theory to encompass other forms of oppression, and we have to show people that they are more oppressed than they think they are. They're suffering from what they call false consciousness. So you think that if you have a family and a small home and a regular work schedule and you're staying out of debt, that you're doing pretty well. But no, really, you're oppressed. So they tried to expand the categories of oppression. And people like Herbert Marcuse would say that we've been lulled into some kind of a state through technology where we are content with our lives, but still it's a deeply, structurally, systemically unjust system. And so they tried to bring in sexual minorities and key into the concerns about how people of color were treated and so on. So expand the base of revolutionaries by saying that you are oppressed in all these different ways. And one way of dealing with this is what's called intersectionality. So the claim is that there are multiple categories of oppression. So there's color, there's gender, there's sexual identification, and so on. But my main concern with this is not that groups are unimportant. Your membership in a group is unimportant. It does. And there are stereotypes for people in groups. People are discriminated against. But with critical race theory, this becomes the fundamental category for analysis. So what matters about you is if you're white or black or Asian or Hispanic or whether you're gay or straight or whatever it is. That's what really matters. This is an extension of something called identity politics. It's basically identity politics ramped up beyond anything you can imagine previously. And the better way, the more biblical and American way of viewing it is that people are individuals before God. We're all made in the image and likeness of God. So we have equal dignity. There's one God. There's one human race. There are two genders that God created. And then we need to work for the common good, loving God and our neighbor within those categories of a worldview and not keep trying to find layer upon layer upon layer of oppression because you happen to be a person of color or a woman or LGBTQ. Now, those need to be taken seriously, no question. But the problem is when you have this neo-Marxist view where everything is understood in terms of group membership and oppressed relationships. That becomes the default. It actually becomes the only mode of analysis. So, I want to know how oppressed, let's say, a black, lesbian, tenured professor is in the American system. Well, you've got black, you've got lesbian, you've got a woman. So, a little redundant there. But you got three indices of oppression, But if you look at somebody in that situation, they're actually quite successful. So I don't think it's fair. Or let's talk about, very poor white folks in Appalachia, second, third generation welfare, maybe addicted to drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And so because you have a white male, that person is part of the oppressor class against people of color and so on. I think it's far better to view people as individuals before God, make laws fair and just, give people equal opportunities, and then let's work in the churches and let's work in personal persuasion to advocate for love and working for the common good, but not try to sort everything out according to these woke categories from the top down. So critical race theory people are against the free market. They think the free market always leads to racism, which is absurd, and I deal with that in my book, Fire in the Streets. No system is going to just eliminate racism. Socialism won't. The free market won't. The issue is really in the human heart and whether your laws are fair for everyone, given who they are as people, as human beings made in God's image. So a lot of people are very attracted, I think, to some of what the critical race theory people have to say because they find certain inequities in society and they're discontent with what's happening and they are desperate for some kind of a solution. But as I try to show in the book, critical race theory doesn't give us the right categories of analysis and it doesn't give us the right vision for society. So there's a lot to work on, but I think the essential American values of ordered liberty under God, individual rights, these are far better categories to work with than anything like critical race theory has to offer.